It often starts with a message that feels strangely personal, a friendly invitation, a polite greeting, a tip that sounds like it came from someone in the know. The wording is warm, the screenshots look professional, and the offer is framed as a rare chance to get in early. A new investment app appears with clean charts, a simple dashboard, and a neat little button that seems to turn small deposits into steady gains. The story is not about one country or one platform. It is about a repeating pattern, one that law enforcement agencies have been trying to interrupt again and again through raids, arrests, account freezes, and cross-border investigations. In early January 2026, police in Gurgaon, India, described a network that used WhatsApp groups to draw people into what looked like organized trading guidance and high-return opportunities. Investigators said the operation involved multiple people playing different roles. Some handled conversations with targets, some managed bank accounts, and some helped route funds onward. During a raid, police reported seizing a collection of devices and bank cards that were allegedly used to run and scale the scheme. The case stood out because it showed how investment app stories often rely less on sophisticated finance and more on coordinated communication, groups, scripts, and repeated reassurance. The pitch is rarely loud, it is steady. It creates a feeling that you are joining a community rather than making a risky decision. What makes these app-based traps especially persuasive is how they mimic normal investing habits. They offer a watch list, they show positions, they display a growth curve that rises smoothly, as if the market itself has become calm and predictable. That smoothness is not a detail, it is part of the persuasion. Real markets move in uneven ways, but a fake interface can be designed to remove uncertainty and replace it with comforting visuals. The app becomes a stage set. It is not there to reflect reality, but to shape emotion. Crackdown stories also reveal a second engine behind the illusion, the money pipeline. Investigations commonly describe a chain of accounts that makes funds harder to trace. It may begin with ordinary-looking transfers to local bank accounts, then move through multiple layers, and sometimes end in overseas routing. In the Gurgaon case, police said part of the money was sent abroad, and they linked the operation to handlers outside India. Whether every detail is eventually proven in court, the investigation narrative itself highlights something important for listeners. The product is not trading expertise. The product is trust, harvested at scale, converted into transfers, and moved quickly enough that victims feel stuck in the moment. From an education perspective, the most useful insight is how the emotional arc is managed. A too good to be true app does not usually ask for a huge amount on day one. It aims for a small first step that feels harmless. Then it rewards that step with a positive signal, a small profit, a congratulatory message, a dashboard that says you are doing well. That reward is not generosity, it is training. It teaches the user that the system works. After that, the asks tend to grow. The app may suggest that a larger amount unlocks a higher tier, better signals, or faster withdrawals. The goal is not to create a single transaction, it is to create a rhythm. Crackdowns also show how these networks recruit helpers who may not fully understand the harm they enable. Some people are paid to open accounts, forward messages, or manage devices. Others are brought in with the promise of easy income for remote support work. In the Gurgon case, police described people who allegedly handled account setup and transfers under instruction. That matters because it explains why these schemes can expand rapidly. Tasks are divided, simplified, and outsourced. The system runs like a small company, except the service it provides is a carefully engineered illusion. The first lesson, then, is not a technical one, it is a human one. When an investment pitch removes uncertainty and replaces it with certainty, when it offers consistent gains without clearly explaining risk, and when it asks you to move quickly while discouraging independent verification, it is not behaving like a legitimate financial service. It is behaving like a persuasion machine. And when law enforcement breaks one machine, another often appears, with a new name, a new icon, and the same script. A different variation of the same story shows up when investing is blended with simple tasks, easy steps that look like harmless online activity. In February 2025, VietnamNet reported that police in Ha Tinh province dismantled a transnational scam network that targeted victims through fake Bitcoin investment claims and task mechanics linked to popular online behavior. The report described large losses across many victims, and it framed the case as a coordinated operation rather than a one-off trick. This hybrid approach is especially effective because it turns the experience into a game-like routine. The user is not told, take a big risk. The user is told, complete small steps, earn small rewards, then scale up. The platform creates a sense of progress. The tasks provide a reason to return daily. The app interface provides proof that the progress is real. Over time, the user's attention becomes the most valuable asset. Attention creates repetition, repetition creates belief, and belief creates larger transfers. Crackdown stories often mention that these networks operate across borders, using remote coordination to reduce risk for top organizers. That structure makes cases like Ha Tinh important because they demonstrate that local enforcement can still identify patterns, gather evidence, and disrupt operations even when parts of the network are outside the country. For audiences, the practical insight is that the foreign element is often used as a credibility trick. A scheme may hint that its technology or liquidity is international, as if cross-border means advanced. In reality, cross-border can simply mean harder to trace routing and fragmented accountability. The education value is also in the way legitimacy is mimicked. Fake investment stories often borrow symbols of real finance, charts, coins, terms like wallet, exchange, signal, allocation. Those words can be used responsibly in legitimate contexts, but in scam contexts, they become costume jewelry. Shiny language that looks valuable until you test it. The Ha Tinh case, as described in the report, included fake Bitcoin investment claims alongside task-based mechanics, a combination that helps the system appeal to both "I want to invest" and "I just want side income" audiences at the same time. Another repeated feature in crackdowns is the withdrawal storyline. Victims are often shown balances that appear to grow, and the moment they try to withdraw, a barrier appears, a verification step, a fee, a tax, a tier upgrade, a security deposit. The barrier is framed as standard procedure. The goal is to turn the desire to exit into a reason to pay more. This is where listeners can learn a key principle. If a platform requires extra payments to access your own funds, especially through unusual channels or time pressure, it is not acting like a normal financial provider. It is creating a one-way door. Law enforcement reports and news coverage also highlight how victims are selected. These networks frequently look for people who are curious, optimistic, and open to learning, traits that are positive in real investing. The scheme simply exploits them. It may provide friendly coaching, a group mentor, or a customer support persona who answers quickly and praises the user's progress. The user is made to feel smart, early, and chosen. That emotional design is not accidental, it is central to the operation. The Ha Ting crackdown story, as presented publicly, also matters because it reminds audiences that enforcement responses can be real and coordinated. Investigations can lead to arrests, device seizures, and identification of the people behind the screens. The educational takeaway is not "everything can be recovered" or "every case ends well," but rather that these schemes are not untouchable. They leave trails, accounts, devices, chat logs, transaction records, IP infrastructure, recruitment messages. The more people report early, the more visible those trails become. In documentary terms, this part of the story is about how a fake investment app stops being just an app and becomes a behavioral loop. It uses tasks to build habit, habit to build belief, and belief to build the next transfer. And when police disrupt one loop, they reveal the blueprint for many others. One of the quieter details in many crackdown stories is the physical prop: an ID badge, a staff pass, a printed document. Even in a digital scam, symbols of legitimacy still carry weight because people trust what looks institutional. In December 2025, the Singapore police force reported that 2 men would be charged for suspected involvement in scam cases. As part of the case exhibits, police said they seized mobile phones and a fake staff pass of an investment company. That detail is revealing. It suggests that the scheme did not rely only on app screens, it also relied on the ability to act like a representative, someone connected to a real firm, or someone who could pass as an insider. For victims, this kind of prop can be a turning point. The moment they think, "this must be real because there's documentation." But fake documentation is not hard to produce, and the presence of a badge does not prove authorization. It proves only that someone wanted you to believe they were authorized. The Singapore police note also shows another feature common in investment app stories: the blend of local and foreign elements. Police said one suspect was arrested when he attempted to leave Singapore. The implication for audiences is that mobility can be part of the operational design. People move, roles shift, and responsibility is kept blurry. A user might be told, "Our team is international," when in reality, the system is international because it is trying to be difficult to pin down. In education-focused storytelling, it is important to highlight what enforcement messages typically emphasize: evidence gathering, identification, and the role of devices. Phones are not just communication tools in these operations, they are control panels. They hold group chats, scripts, contact lists, authentication codes, and access to accounts. When police seize devices, they often gain a map of how the operation functioned day to day: who coached, who recruited, who handled funds, who answered victims, who built the illusion of support. Another recurring element in scam crackdowns is the use of money mule structures, people who move funds without fully understanding the source or who accept payments to process transfers. Singapore police have repeatedly announced enforcement actions against people suspected of involvement in scam-related money mule activities, including cases where investment scams are listed among the scam types. These public announcements matter because they show an important truth. Modern scam networks do not rely on one villain. They rely on many small roles, sometimes filled by people who convince themselves they are doing processing work. The documentary lesson here is that legitimacy is often performed in layers. First layer, the app itself, with professional visuals. Second layer, the human support persona, friendly and responsive. Third layer, the credentials, passes, logos, official sounding titles. The more layers, the harder it becomes for a victim to admit doubt. They feel they have already accepted too many proofs, so questioning one proof feels like questioning their own judgment. A safe educational approach is to focus on verification rather than fear. In many legitimate markets, authorized financial firms can be checked through official registries, and real customer service does not punish you for verifying. A fake system often discourages verification by substituting speed for certainty. This opportunity closes today. The allocation is limited. Withdrawals require immediate action. Those phrases are not just marketing, they are pressure tools designed to shrink the time you have to think. The Singapore case exhibits a final important pattern. Real enforcement communication tends to be calm, factual, and specific about what was seized and what charges may follow. That tone is a contrast to the scam tone, which often swings between excitement, "you're earning now," and urgency, "act quickly." When listeners learn to recognize tone as a signal, they gain something valuable, a way to separate persuasion from information. Not every too good to be true story needs a brand new app. Some schemes borrow the reputation of legitimate firms by impersonation, creating a look-alike identity that is close enough to confuse people. The UK Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, has warned the public about clone firm investment scams, where fraudsters imitate genuine authorized firms. In a 2021 FCA press release, The regulator highlighted significant consumer losses and emphasized that criminals use cloned details to appear authentic. This variant is powerful because it hijacks a trust shortcut. People are taught to check whether a firm exists, so scammers make sure a firm exists. Then they copy it. They may use a similar name, similar branding, similar website layout, and then direct victims to the wrong phone number, wrong email, or wrong app link. The victim believes they have done diligence because the firm is real, but they have actually contacted the impersonator. Educationally, the clone firm approach matters because it shifts the warning from unknown app equals danger to even familiar names can be misused. It also reframes what verification really means. Not does the firm exist, but am I communicating through the firm's confirmed channels? Many people do not realize that a small difference in a domain name, a letter in an email address, or a contact number can be the whole scam. The FCA has continued to issue warnings and lead actions against illegal financial promotions, and industry coverage has described regulators coordinating broader efforts to reduce exposure to rogue promotions. While the details differ case by case, the pattern is consistent. Scams thrive where attention is fragmented. Social feeds, message apps, fast-moving ads, and influencer-like pitches that blur the line between personal recommendation and paid promotion. In documentary form, this part of the story is almost psychological. Clone scams exploit the idea that if it looks like a known institution, it must be safe. They weaponize familiarity. They also exploit politeness. Many victims hesitate to ask direct, verifying questions because they do not want to seem distrustful. Scammers count on that hesitation. They are often very courteous because courtesy lowers defenses. Crackdowns and regulator warnings also highlight how losses can become large, not because victims are careless, but because they are consistent. A person may invest multiple times, believing they are building a portfolio. The scam does not need to persuade them repeatedly, it just needs to keep the channel open. Over time, a fake dashboard can show growth that confirms the decision, and that confirmation can override small doubts. The educational value here is the concept of channel integrity. Legitimate firms expect you to reach them through their official website, verified contacts, and regulated pathways. Clone schemes try to intercept you earlier, at the moment you click an ad, accept a chat invite, or download an app from a link. Once the channel is intercepted, everything that follows is controlled. This is why many safe investing campaigns emphasize not clicking links from unsolicited messages. It's not because links are always malicious, but because links are the easiest way to redirect someone from a real-world reference point into a controlled, staged environment. The clone firm is not only a false identity, it's a false environment where every proof is generated inside the scammer's world. When scam networks span countries, enforcement responses often do too. A useful example of cross-border cooperation is a joint operation reported by Channel News Asia in August 2022, where Singapore and Malaysia police arrested individuals suspected of involvement in transnational scam syndicate and described the syndicates as being crippled by the arrests. Even though this case coverage is not limited to investment apps, it illustrates a critical piece of the investment app crackdown story, the laundering layer. Fake investment apps can look like they are about finance, but enforcement narratives often show they are equally about moving money quickly through networks of accounts. The laundering layer is what turns persuasion into profit. It is also what creates urgency for victims. Once funds move through enough hops, recovery becomes harder, and the scammer can keep the victim focused on unlocking withdrawals rather than on the reality that the money has already traveled. Many public police updates emphasize the role of money mule behavior, people who lend accounts, open accounts, or move funds for a fee. Singapore police announcements in 2025 included arrests and investigations into suspected money mule activities and noted that investment scams are among the scam types involved. These updates reinforce an educational point. If someone offers you quick money to help receive funds or process transfers, you may be stepping into the machinery that powers scams. In the documentary arc, this part explains why too good to be true apps feel so hard to stop. The front end, the app name, the chat group, the ad, can be replaced quickly. The back end, accounts, mules, transfer routes, can also be replaced, but it takes coordination. When enforcement strikes the back end, it can slow the system more effectively. Cross-border cases also show how criminals try to reduce their own risk, separating the people who talk to victims from the people who move funds, and separating both from whoever built or controls the software. That separation creates plausible deniability inside the network, but it also creates points of failure. Every additional layer is another person who can make a mistake, leave a trace, or cooperate with investigators. From an educational standpoint, it is crucial to avoid turning this into a how-to description. The safe lesson is simply this: complexity is not a sign of legitimacy. Scammers often build complicated routes precisely because complexity confuses victims and slows accountability. A legitimate financial provider typically makes funding and withdrawals clear, documented, and verifiable. A scam system often makes the process feel like a maze where you must keep paying to find the exit. As enforcement agencies cooperate more, another pattern becomes visible. Announcements become more specific about what was seized, what was blocked, and how victims should report. The calmness of these communications is an important contrast to scam messaging. Law enforcement rarely tells you to rush. Scammers almost always do. Some crackdown stories do not end at the moment of arrests. They continue into extradition, long investigations, and the identification of top organizers. In November 2025, VietnamNet reported on the extradition of a top scam ringleader, Lee Coc Nong, from the Philippines to Vietnam in connection with a large international financial scam. describing the crackdown as a major takedown of a tech-based transnational fraud ring. This kind of case matters because it highlights a reality many victims never see. Scam systems can have leadership layers. The person messaging a victim may not be the person benefiting most. Extradition stories suggest that authorities are sometimes able to climb beyond local operators and pursue higher-level suspects through international coordination. In documentary tone, this part is about patience and persistence. Investigations can take time because evidence must be collected carefully across jurisdictions. Financial traces must be confirmed, devices must be analyzed, accounts must be linked to real identities. When a case reaches the stage of extradition, it usually reflects extensive collaboration behind the scenes. The educational insight is that too good to be true apps are often not random pop-up schemes. They can be organized enterprises that treat deception like a business process. Recruitment, scripts, customer handling, technical support, and fund movements. Understanding that structure helps audiences stop blaming themselves. Many victims feel embarrassed because they assume they should have known, but these networks often invest real effort into making the experience feel normal. The Vietnam Net extradition report also reinforces the global dimension. When scams cross borders, victims can feel powerless, yet cross-border enforcement can also exist. The story becomes not only about harm, but also about how systems respond, how agencies adapt, share intelligence, and pursue suspects beyond local boundaries. In a safe, educational narrative, the key is to keep the focus on prevention and recovery pathways rather than drama. The useful points for listeners are report early, preserve messages in transaction records, and seek official guidance rather than relying on the scammer's support. Many victims stay trapped because they keep negotiating with the very system that is designed to keep them paying. The moment the victim treats it as a fraud report rather than a customer service dispute is often the moment they regain agency. This part of the documentary also helps explain why scams keep changing names. If authorities pursue key suspects and dismantle infrastructure, new teams may appear to replace them. The audience takeaway is that the fight is ongoing, and awareness is part of protection. Crackdowns today are not only about physical raids. They are also about platform policies, account takedowns, warning campaigns, and coordinated disruption operations. Media coverage has highlighted that law enforcement and regulators increasingly focus on dismantling the operational capability of scam networks, removing their ability to advertise, process funds, and recruit new participants. A modern scam network often has multiple public-facing doors, ads, social pages, chat invites, affiliate-like promoters, and app links. If one door closes, another opens. So enforcement and regulators aim to close several doors at once. That can include alerting the public to cloned firms, issuing consumer warnings, seizing devices, arresting money mules, and tracking cross-border funds. The documentary value here is in understanding that prevention is increasingly a shared responsibility. Regulators warn, police investigate, platforms remove, banks flag abnormal patterns, but the individual user still plays a key role, slowing down, verifying, and resisting urgency. Crackdown stories can inspire hope, but they also remind us that enforcement typically reacts after harm has already occurred. Education is what can reduce harm before the next app appears. Many victims describe the same emotional sequence: curiosity, cautious optimism, initial reward, growing confidence, and then a sudden wall when they try to withdraw. That wall is not always framed as a threat, it is framed as procedure. The user is asked to keep complying. That is why educational storytelling should emphasize a gentle, non-judgmental rule. If the only way to resolve a withdrawal issue is to pay more, step back and verify through independent channels. Regulator messaging around cloned firms also shows that professional design is no longer a reliable signal. A scam app can look better than a legitimate app because it does not have to meet the same compliance standards, risk disclosures, or customer protection requirements. It can spend all its energy on persuasion. That is why official registries, verified contacts, and transparent terms remain essential. The purpose of telling these crackdown stories is not to create fear. It is to create a calmer form of awareness, one that helps people recognize the pattern before the pattern recognizes them. Across the cases described publicly, India's WhatsApp-linked investment fraud arrests in January 2026, Vietnam's dismantling of a transnational fake investment network reported in February 2025, Singapore's enforcement updates in late 2025, and the UK FCA's warnings about clone firm scams, the repeating features are strikingly consistent. First, the promise is rarely, "I will trick you." The promise is, "This is simple." The app makes investing feel like a guaranteed routine rather than a risk-managed decision. Second, the social layer is central. Groups, mentors, helpers, and praise that turns a stranger's advice into a friend's guidance. Third, the proof is staged. Dashboards, smooth charts, and sometimes even physical-looking credentials like passes or badges. Fourth, the exit is controlled. Withdrawals become conditional, delayed, or dependent on extra payments. A safe educational ending focuses on what real institutions typically allow: time to think, permission to verify, clear documentation, and independent confirmation. Regulators like the FCA warn about clones precisely because verification must be done through official channels, not through links provided in unsolicited messages. Police updates emphasize evidence and reporting, which suggests another protective habit. Keep records, do not delete chats immediately, and contact official support lines rather than the support inside the suspicious system. Finally, crackdown stories teach a quieter truth. Shame is a tool scammers rely on. If victims feel embarrassed, they delay reporting. Delay helps the network. The safer ending is not silence. It is early action and calm reporting. When enough people report early, patterns become visible faster and enforcement can move sooner. In that sense, every crackdown is not just a story about what happened yesterday, it is a lesson designed to protect someone tomorrow.